first book was called The Driver's Seat. Well, actually, my
Mm-hmm.
first published book is my life story, right? I felt like I needed to get my life story out. I needed to
Uh-huh.
have it live in the world. And it's called The Poet Who Watched the Whole Parade. My first coaching book is called The Driver's Seat, which is really all about how to get out of the backseat of your life and
Uh-huh.
drive in your God-given purpose, which is the exact same thing that pretty much I'm always saying. It's always about identity, finding who you are, having that courage to put in the work to drive forward in it. The second book is Rare on Purpose, which was released this May 2025.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Pedro, and today's guest is Jay Floyd, founder of Rare on Purpose and a data engineering leader with 20 years in tech, who now manages data teams at Zapier. After roles as an IC, architect, and manager, he focused on helping technical teams tackle hard problems without burning out. His coaching is built on a simple idea: identity is an advantage. He helps engineers lead with clarity and authenticity, and extends that work through his writing and his podcast on everything. Okay, welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you, Pedro. Appreciate it, man. That was a great intro. I love that.
Hey, I appreciate you being here with us today. So, all right. Well, I'm kind of a sucker for origin stories, Jay, and we were talking before the podcast that you've been coaching for 9 years, right? So
Yeah.
every coach has that moment where they look at their life and say, hey, you know what? I guess this is what I'm doing now. So
Yeah.
when was that for you, man?
Well, let me see. I was in high school and I got bit by this radioactive spider. And no, that's not really. No, you know what? 9 years ago, I just bought a new house and my son was born, and I walked downstairs to my office and logged onto my machine to do some work, and God spoke and said, "You're a coach, and you've always been a coach, and you're the last to figure it out." Right? So it made a lot of my life make sense in that moment. There's a lot of traumatic moments that I had been through. A lot of times I had played the coach role. A lot of what I call training I had been through. And right in that moment, there was a stark realization. So at that, I was already sitting at my computer. So I just Googled, how do you become a life coach? And I became a coach that day. And I posted onto Facebook, I'm a coach, and I got clients immediately. So figured it out, right? I started and didn't really know what I was doing. Just figured I'll just get on the phone with these folks and be myself and do the magic. As you can imagine, that launching into a really wide general life coaching. I had a ton of clients who were just like, help me fix my life, right? And that's emotionally and spiritually taxing. And then I started to dig deeper into coaching, and I learned more about finding a niche and gaining a true cohort of folks that are looking for your niche so you don't burn yourself out.
Okay. And it's interesting that it was almost like a calling, right? That
Very
part
much
really
so.
stuck with me. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So, and when did it shift from I'm helping people to I'm building a real business around this?
Man, the moment that I started posting on social media, people were like, that makes perfect sense, right? So I would get a lot of calls like, hey, you should do this. You should do a TED Talk. You should go speak here. You should come to my church. You should, there's a bunch of people who knew me and felt like I would be a good fit at doing things. So I tried a bunch of those things, right? Like keynote speaking, motivational speaking, even group like seminars, and just started to find out where my comfort zone was at, right? And I think I was like, I've always been working in data. I started working in data when I was 21 years old. I've been in this career for a long time, and I kind of started doing coaching on the side and kind of saw it as a little bit of a conflict, right? Like, this is something where I need to hide my coaching from my employers, right? But then it got to the point where it's who I am. So it was bleeding through my entire existence. So people at my job were like, hey, can you coach me? Hey, you got 30 minutes where I can pull you into an office and run some stuff by you and grab some coaching. And that's when it started to become what not only is this something I should pursue in a more focused way, but this is not a conflict and they do go hand in hand. And so now I am a coach. I coach folks who actually do what I do. I coach other data leaders in embarking on their journey the same way that I did and am, right? Because the journey's never over.
That's interesting. After you got rolling, you even mentioned you niched, right? Because we see a lot of coaches that are trying to embrace the entire world and it's not that simple, right? So I would like to understand is who are the people that kept showing up? The ones you realize, okay, this is my crew.
Yeah. Like I said, initially for me, a lot of people saw me as positive black man, right? So the people that know me in life were like, hey, this is great. I'm glad you're a coach. I had a lot of single moms that were like, hey, you can coach me to fix my life and I can go find a man like you. Or, hey, I got a son, a teenage son who I would love to turn out like you. So I want to hire you to coach my son. So that was kind of like the first cohort that kind of like were attracted to my coaching style. And it was very taxing, right? I found that I was successful at it, but it was draining for me. I didn't feel fulfilled. And that's when I knew that was not the niche for me, right? So as I took more and more coaching training and got my certification and learned about niching, right? And I'm like, oh, I got to find a niche here, right? When I go to work, those are the people that immediately resonate to me. And when I'm saying to them, helps them and it energizes me, right? I'm like, this is something I've been doing the whole 20 years I've been working. So that's when it dawned on me that the people right around me who are having this similar journey in the tech world, this constantly changing and stressful tech world where imposter syndrome runs rampant. And a lot of us feel like maybe I'm not smart enough. Maybe I just got lucky to get this job and this career, right? And even I'm dealing with this, right? I've overcome it in certain phases, but still dealing with it every level I get. When I get to management and leadership, I still feel it. So this is the thing that speaks with the most power because it is who I am, right? So I recognize that those people get such an authentic, powerful message from me because they know that I am in it. I'm walking it. I've never given up. And I've found my way to mine the unique traits in me to build a path for success. And that became my hook, right? I have in my own life, I spent about 10 or 15 years trying to like hide my uniquenesses, right? The fact that I come from a pretty impoverished background or I had a non-traditional education and I'm self-taught on a lot of things. And I had a lot of trauma and lost a lot of people. My brother was murdered when I was young. My parents have passed away. Hiding all of those things so that I could blend into the corporate world, then having a revelation that the true power is that story. So unleashing that story not only fueled my career much further because I showed up way more authentically with way more power of all the things that life had brought me through, but that became what people could relate to. That authenticity of me saying, hey, don't ignore or try to mask or erase the unique things you've been through to try to blend into the corporate world. Bring those things because that is your differentiator. And value is driven by rareness. If I cannot replace it, I will pay a lot for it. So bring all of that rareness and turn it into value. That the way you think is driven off of the things you've been through, the hard stuff that it's been difficult for you to make it through. And you probably had to talk to a therapist about, and a coach brings you through. There is power in how that has uniquely cultivated the way that you solve problems, the way that you think outside of the box. And the more you can bring that to the table, that makes you not just a job description. That makes you a rare shape that is really difficult to replace. And that is why I wrote the book Rare on Purpose. That is what my coaching is all about. Opening up that bag of stuff that we've always hidden and using it to become rare, especially in today's day and age, the AI age, where a lot of people are afraid that they're going to be replaced. And there's a lot of anxiety. Well, you can't replace life stories. You can't replace that rareness.
That's interesting, man. The fact that you turn a hardship into an opportunity, you realize that you didn't have to hide something, but own it, right? Have that perception, and I believe it hurts, right? That path is not an easy path, and that's really really impactful. But I want to highlight something that you mentioned, and it's about your niche. It's something that this is, and you're gonna be able to give me the big picture because I'm not in IT. So when I envision someone who is in IT, is someone who's actually usually strong skills are in hard science and not soft science. So do you see that struggle, that the lack of EQ, or the lack of, you have a very technical guy that cannot sell himself or talk to leadership? Do you see that happening? Because that's my point of view, but I might be wrong.
No, 100%. And yeah, like you said, it's not typically one dimensional, but that is very much present, right? In that a lot of people are a lot like I was, right? A high achiever as a kid, right? I was deemed gifted as a really small child, and that comes with its own pros and cons, right? So you start to develop a way of thinking, and some of those are negative beliefs, right? And when you can identify what those negative beliefs are that people have latched onto, even out of being, like you said, technically gifted or scientifically gifted or in these really hard skill ways, they can lock you into a box when it comes to growing through leadership. And one of the things about my niche is that I do coach people in tech, but it's almost exclusively people who are either trying to break into tech or trying to break into leadership in tech. So they're in transition in tech, right? And that's when those things show up of needing to figure out your soft skills or needing to figure out exactly how much confidence you really have in yourself. A lot of people in tech are good in certain ways and do not believe they're good enough in every other, right? So if you take a person who's maybe a sharp AI engineer or a machine learning engineer, which are two very hot industries right now, you take them and you say, okay, I want to make you an offer as a senior machine learning engineer at Meta, right? I'm going to throw this huge paycheck at you. That person who's had all of these achievements and always known that they could accomplish the goal, they're instantly going to be afraid and they're going to think, I'm not good enough for this, right? And I probably was just lucky all those other times I got employment, right? The imposter syndrome is rampant in tech because the moment you get that first, you say, okay, this is my dream job. I really want this job. I want to go to school and grab the credentials to get this job. You don't really think you're going to get it. There's a negative belief where it's like, I'm not going to get it. And when you actually do, it can settle in that, you know what? I got lucky. I'm just the one that they picked. There's plenty of people who would be better. And that becomes a huge stumbling block to growth in the future.
Okay. I mean, that's the coaching side, right? You niche down to IT, and I get it. Now, I want to talk about something different. I want to talk about marketing. And I know you mentioned Facebook, how you started the early days, but how do people usually find you?
LinkedIn. Yeah, it's definitely LinkedIn. I've found over the years, the 9 years that I've been coaching, LinkedIn is kind of where my tribe is, specifically given the type of niche that I have. My employer, Zapier, is a very coaching forward company. We have an internal coaching program. It's one of the reasons why they recruited me to be in the internal coaching program. I am also a brand ambassador for the company. So there's a lot of synergy between my content on LinkedIn and the content that the company posts. So that's definitely where I've been able to find my tribe.
I imagine through some trial and error, or was that clicked fast?
I wouldn't call it fast, but it was clear when it happened, right? I think the thing about LinkedIn is just the scale is so much different, right? So if I'm on Instagram and I only have 3,000 or 4,000 followers, I don't feel successful, right? I don't feel like my reach is where it needs to be. On LinkedIn, 4,000 followers is pretty impressive, right? So I think the scale and the impact because of the purpose of why people are on, right? If you can get 4,000 folks who are following you in a very purposeful way where they're intending to engage as opposed to just scroll, then I think the scale changes. But for me, it wasn't exactly quick. It took a few years. but it was very clear when it happened.
All right. Let's talk business for a second, the structure, right? So people find you on LinkedIn, they resonate with your work, and eventually they want to know what working with you actually looks like. So everyone builds their coaching business a bit differently. So when someone actually becomes a client, Jay, what does that experience look like right now?
There's two ways they can engage with me as a coach. One, they can sign up for group coaching, which typically happens like once a quarter, right? Where I get about 25 folks onto a Zoom. Those are $199 per seat. We do a 90-minute run through of my book and program, Rare on Purpose. And we give people something that they can leave with, which is the ability to identify their top strength and know exactly that combination of what makes them rare. And the second way is a 10 session bundle that you can purchase on my website where they can lock in 10 one-on-one hour-long sessions where we can schedule out based on a person's availability. And we walk through it one-on-one, which is a really good sweet spot for me. I love one-on-one coaching, and they get an individualized experience of identifying what their strengths are. I use the high five strengths test, identifying what their strengths are, putting together an individual plan based on what I like to look at as the top 3 strengths. I really call that their rare stack, right? For every person is different. For me, my number 1 strength is storyteller, number 2 is coach, and number 3 is thinker. So if I'm always putting myself in the position to be those 3 things, regardless of what my job title is, I'm going to have more success, fulfillment, and bring more impact. So that's what a person I deliver in that 10 session bundle. But those are the 2 ways. Group coaching, which happens roughly once a quarter. The next one is occurring January 30th now, or a 10 session bundle.
Okay. Nice to know. So your work seems pretty hands-on, right? I noticed on your website you do have a podcast. You mentioned books, right? The Rare on Purpose. I know there are at least one more and to be announced another one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. So first book was called The Driver's Seat. Well, actually, my
Mm-hmm.
first published book is my life story, right? I felt like I needed to get my life story out. I needed to
Uh-huh.
have it live in the world. And it's called The Poet Who Watched the Whole Parade. My first coaching book is called The Driver's Seat, which is really all about how to get out of the back seat of your life and
Uh-huh.
drive in your God-given purpose, which is the exact same thing that pretty much I'm always saying. It's always about identity, finding who you are, having that courage to put in the work to drive forward in it. The second book is Rare on Purpose, which was released this May 2025.
Mm-hmm.
I do have more. I actually would like to get into fiction. I have plenty of fiction stories I want to publish because I'm a storyteller first and foremost, and locking into the ability to also show people their own identity through fictional characters is something that really intrigues me. And I think there's a lot of upbringings, lifestyles, regions of the country and world that haven't been represented in a very authentic way. And there's a lot of meat on the bone there.
Okay. So on top of that, the podcast, the books, the group coaching, and the one-on-ones. My question is, how do you think about capacity so you don't stretch yourself too thin? And top of that, there's a full-time job,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
How do you
I
handle
think
that?
about capacity all the time. Because I am a creative, right? I'm a natural born creative. It's so interesting when I met my wife, one of the first things that she said to me was, "How are you going to do all these things?" Right? Like, how do you pattern it all out? And I think I've grown a lot over the years of, at first I would try my best to streamline, right? Like, hey, I'm only going to do one thing and I'll put everything else on the back burner. But what I've learned is more effective for me is unifying my message, right? So what I do in my 9 to 5 job or my full-time job is very aligned with what I'm coaching about and the people I'm coaching. And it's very aligned with what I write about. So, and podcast is completely just me being me. That's why it's called On Everything, because I didn't want to niche down the podcast. I wanted to just speak from my life and my own identity, because that is my niche, is about recognizing your identity and everything you've been through. So the more that I've been able to unify every single lane that I'm in to ensure that if I'm writing a book, it's in the same lane and serving the same purpose, then it saves a lot of time and capacity for me.
Okay. I mean, that's a solid look about how you think about capacity. And now I'm curious about where you're taking all this, looking ahead, where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring, or is there any next step you're excited about?
As far as scaling and hiring, I don't know. I have a passion for coaching, and I'm pretty sure I'll be coaching the rest of my healthy life. So I never see that stopping. I have an in relationship with the business of coaching in that I found, and I'm still navigating what I consider a pretty sweet spot for me, where I'm not sure I want to scale up and hire. Although if I do, I could see myself building my own group coaching practice, right? Where there's me and a handful of other similar minded coaches who are approaching different niches, right? I could see that as being something I would approach, but also being a leader and being around other leaders. And it grants me the opportunity to find leaders who want coaching. So right now I feel really good in being a leader in the data and tech space and still running the coaching business secondarily.
Got it. I want to tap into your experience for a second. You've been 9 years in the game, trial and error, because
Yeah.
people listening can really benefit from this. It's been a long way for you, and you heard all kinds of business advice, I imagine, some that sticks and some that really doesn't. So, what's one piece of business advice you hear all the time, in the coaching space specifically, that you think is overrated or misunderstood?
Wow, that is a really good one. I think a lot of the advice that I've gotten around, see how to word this, around self compassion equaling like taking it easy, right? Or self care and meaning to stop working, right? Where a lot of times I found that the best self care and the best self compassion is not to ease back on the amount of work or hustle or grind, but to lean into where it should be placed, right? In your identity. If you're scattershot, hustling and grinding and just trying to make a dollar, yes, I agree. The best way to care for yourself is to scale back on that. But if you focus in on your true purpose, I don't agree. I think the hustle should ramp up. I think you should grind and you should put in that extra work and gain the ability to rest from that. So I'm not always aligned with that. And I would also say there's a secondary piece of advice that's not that I disagree with it, but it's more nuanced to it, and that it relates to my niche, and that is that you should bring your whole self to work. Typically, people, especially people who hear my message, they align it with the idea that I get the freedom to bring my whole self to work. And a lot of people that doesn't resonate with them. And I think it shouldn't resonate with everybody because you shouldn't have to bring your whole self to work. You should feel the psychological safety and freedom in yourself to bring whatever pieces you want and you feel are valuable. It doesn't have to be your whole self, but you should not be hiding just because you think it's what needs to happen in the corporate world. Yes, you don't need to bring every single thing, but you should bring the things that make you rare. You should not limit yourself to a rectangle in a job description. You should give yourself the unique shape. And that is up to you how much you want to bring in, right? So I want to make sure that people are clear that I feel like people should have agency over how much they want to bring, but they should not hold it back out of fear that they're not going to fit in if they're different. No, you can actually drive value by differentiating yourself.
Yeah, I can resonate with that. I mean, it's so hard to wear a mask, right? It starts leaking sometime somewhere because if you're trying to hide something, it's just exhausting, right?
It's super
The day to
exhausting.
day will kill you, right? I mean, not that I do that, but I can imagine how much suffering that would put into someone, right? So
Yeah,
it's not like you need to tell about all your personal details. It's just that those big ones, like you mentioned in your story, like you're trying to hide and you're like, oh my God, this is so hard. That what we shouldn't be doing, right?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick example. When I started working in the corporate world, I was still in college. I felt very lucky to get the job. I hadn't graduated yet. I still had another year. So to get a full-time job, I was like, I can't believe this, right? I'm going to do whatever it takes to fit in, right? Like if I got to say I play golf, then I will, right? And I get there and, people are saying things like, talking about their life and what they've been through and what their family was like. And they would ask me, hey, Jay, are you an only child? And the reality for me is that I'm not an only child. I had an older brother who I grew up with, who was the biggest male figure in my life. He was my role model, and he was murdered when I was 16 years old. He was 19. He was killed in a violent way. And I couldn't bring myself to say that. So for years, I would just say, yeah, I'm an only child. Yeah. But I'm almost re-traumatizing myself by erasing this important person out of my life in order to move forward, right? So not only am I putting on a mask, I'm hurting myself. That is a lot of emotional baggage just to answer that question and say, I'm an only child. And to have that freedom to finally break away from that and the courage to finally break away from that and say what really happened and let people see who I really am. My fear was that they would see me as different. They ultimately, of course they will, right? But that's okay. Everybody
Doesn't need to be a bad thing to be seen as different, right?
need to be a bad thing. And I'll say, the best investment I ever made in myself was a therapist. And my therapist helped me she helped me reframe, which is what a coach does, right? Which so I can relate to that very well. Reframe this negative belief that I was abnormal because of what I went through and understand that I'm simply unique because of what I went through and everybody is, right? So that instead of being that my difference sets me away from everybody, my difference actually puts me in the same boat as everybody. Here we all are very unique, right? So that I think it was a huge eye opener for me and a game changer.
Wow, that's powerful. Yeah. And on the other side, Jay, what's a piece of advice you wish more people actually took seriously?
Everybody needs a coach. Even coaches need coaches. I honestly think the true triumvirate is to have a coach and a therapist as you walk through life, right? I think it's a great, healthy way to, even if it's not a full-time. I don't use a full-time therapist, but what I do is typically every year or two, I'll do a 90-day sprint with something I want to address and grow in, right? And I think that's been a healthy way for me to approach it. Honestly, I think everybody needs a coach. Anybody who's done anything great in the world has a coach, whether you see them or not. Michael Jordan has a coach, everybody. So you're not going to accomplish the great things set forth for you on your own. You need that coach, that person, that third party who can help you reframe things. It's not that you can't see them. Coaches are not pointing at things that you haven't seen. They're reframing them so that you can see them in a different light and have a different thought and action about them.
I love that. I love the fact that you mentioned MJ, because what we see sometimes in the coaching space is that we have a client or a potential client, and he measures himself to the coach, right? But that's a different skill set. So if you have a great coach for Michael Jordan and you're thinking, why would the GOAT need a coach? It's because it's different skill set, right? A coach does one thing and Michael has a different skill set. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Definitely. The coach is
Yeah.
locked in on refining. And, I did a speech on this called Pressure because people do not succeed to the level of their goals. I think we all see that every single year when New Year's comes around and we all set resolutions and then we fail. You don't succeed to the goal you set. You fail to the point of your preparation. So if we have bad habits, when the pressure is high, we're going to regress to the level of those habits. So you'll see the Tom Brady and the Michael Jordan, they're having coaches because they want to raise that floor, right? That coach's ability is to identify what's leading to that. What's the negative belief? What is the negative step? What's the bad habit? When blitzed, do you throw off your back foot? Okay, I can identify that. And I can not only identify it, I can give you the exercises and the drills to run so that your body can change, right? It's like changing the soil and getting a diamond, right? The same minerals, you can get a diamond out of it if the soil is the pressure correctly. So you're elevating that floor because you know pressure is going to come. You're preparing yourself for the day when the pressure is high. You're back to your lowest habit and it'll be higher than it was. That's what a coach does.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And Jay, if someone's listening and wants to connect with you or follow your work, where can people find you and connect with you?
Yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. Again, my tribe is there. Find me at I am Jay Floyd, linkedin.com/I am Jay Floyd. You can go to my website, Rare on Purpose, and find everything I got going on. You can sign up for my coaching. You can book me to do a speech, podcast. And also, you could appear on my podcast if you want to talk about anything about growing up in the 80s and 90s and those things that I like to discuss. And I also have a clothing line which is really niched into what I like to do. So a lot of those people who brought their young teens, their teen boys to be coached by me, although that is no longer my niche, I have things for them to prepare them for leadership in life. So we have a Lionheart quarter zip that has on purpose only on the back so that you can prepare your nephew or son for their job interviews or their college interviews as they're going off to be future leaders. So check out rareonpurpose.com. That's where you'll see a lot of what I do.
Okay. And there were a few things you shared today that really stuck with me. Okay. Well, I'd say first thing is, the fact that you had a calling, right? I love that. And how natural that flow with your first clients went and everyone clicking like, hey, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I really like that. And the fact that you own your past, right? Instead of hiding, but now you're showing everyone and, having that ownership. I love that with the unfortunate event with your brother, which I'm sorry to hear, but there are a lot of stories like that. And it's important for you to shed some light, and also, bring your whole self to work, that actually it's like what you've been through. So that's why I think it's so powerful because it's so authentic, and I can tell. So I appreciate what you do. I appreciate you being here today and sharing so openly. Okay. It was great having you, Jay.
Thanks, Pedro. It was great talking to you, man. You are a great interviewer.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.